Before we begin, I would like to thank the many individuals whose efforts and generosity have made this forum possible. Thanks to the volunteers who have facilitated our gathering this evening. And sincerest thanks to the many among you who have contributed your thoughtful questions, ideas, and advice over the last month or so for this forum. Your value has been incalculable. We are still receiving questions this evening, and those that can be worked into the prepared questioning, we will work them in as we can. My apologies to all who have posed excellent questions that we don't have time to ask. I would also like to thank our hosts, the Rowan College of South Jersey, and particularly Linda Rumings, who arranged for us to use this comfortable space. But most of all, I would like to thank our candidates who have made space in their grinding campaign schedules to join us this evening and share with you their hopes and plans for serving you in Washington. We are honored to have you. You are seated here in order determined by chance, and will be called upon to introduce yourselves and to briefly respond to questions in turn. Our timekeeper and clock should be visible to you. Besides the visible clock, there will be a verbal reminder of 1 minute remaining and 10 seconds remaining. Please limit your remarks to the time allotted. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions from the audience? All right, let's begin. We will start. With candidates introducing themselves with 2-minute opening remarks. Mr. Finn, will you begin?
Hi, thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you guys for having me. As mentioned, my name is Bill Finn. I am one of the first of my family to graduate from college. I am also the son of a retired 420 student who's sitting right here in the audience with us. My godfather is a retired 361 electrician. And I'm here running as a school teacher, single father, a coach, who's just tired of seeing the middle class feel the squeeze every day, day in, day out. And it's long before we get the squeeze, long before the big beautiful bill. That just put the squeeze on steroids. You know, and now we're at war for God knows whatever reason. I said last week we spent over $3 billion, now we're getting close to $6 billion. By the end of the month, we would have been able to supply free school lunch for all students, regardless of economic background. I'm here because I think we don't need more of the same. I know we really want a victory here. We want to beat Jeff. But we're going to beat Jeff with not another politician, somebody who's been in Washington. Last time I was in Washington, I was putting wreaths down at the National Cemetery with my son's scout troop. And that was when Carson Wentz was going evil. Because part of my son's Christmas gift that year was we had tickets to go watch that team win the NFC East. So that's how long it's been since I've been in Washington. I don't think we're going to do it with a lawyer. We're going to do it with somebody who's just like one of you guys out here in the audience. Somebody who knows the struggle every day and has been living it. I think it's time we had a voice from the people to represent the people. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me here today. And I want to just start by recognizing that it is Women's History Month. And in Women's History Month, we are recognizing the accomplishments of women that are so often forgotten, overlooked, sometimes stolen, or even copied. Their work was credited to others, their leadership minimized, and even today, women are still judged by standards men rarely face. And it is in that spirit that I am here before you tonight. My name is Terry Reese. I'm a lifelong resident of Atlantic County, and I'm the daughter of this district. I've traveled throughout this entire district, not just while I've been campaigning, but throughout my entire life, in every corner of this district, whether it was visiting friends, family, shopping at new stores that happened or popped up, or eating out at new restaurants, small family restaurants or small businesses that occurred, visiting parks and beaches and lakes and rivers and everything in between. I've been unemployed. I've been on Medicaid. I've been without health insurance as well. And I've spent most of my life facing the same struggles that many of you have. As a single mother, I fought attorneys in one. As a caregiver for my mother, I fought with health insurance companies to make sure she got the services she was due. I've helped build coalitions, problem solve, and work, refine, and create workable solutions. That's what I bring to Congress. Our district is my heart. I love everything about it, every piece of it. And I will fight for this district as I fight for my family, because that's how I consider all of you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Winder.
Good evening. Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Bailey Winder. I live in Mays Landing. I'm a fourth-generation New Jerseyan. My family taught me the meaning of service and of giving back to our country. And with that in mind, I started my career at the State Department. I worked on Iran policy when Donald Trump tore up the nuclear agreement, and I'm horrified by what we're seeing right now, which is our brave people in uniform being killed and put in harm's way, $1 billion a day for a war with no end in sight. It's unacceptable. I was an advisor to the FBI. I worked at a small business for a few years, and I most recently served at USAID on the leadership team before that part of our national security was torn down by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That move made us weaker, and it showed what happens when Congress has no spine. Jeff Andrew is the perfect example of that. I believe South Jersey deserves better. I believe the top priorities need to be the cost of living crisis we are in, protecting health care, and cleaning up the corruption in DC that is out of control. This is not a moment to play it safe. It's not a moment to copy and paste in the same playbook. It is a time to fight, to take risks, to pass the baton, to have a Democratic Party that steps up and understands the emergency that we are in. I've been privileged to take that oath to the Constitution. I've spent the last 8 months pounding the pavement, doing 7 town halls, spent a lot of time in Vineland, and I'm thrilled to be back with you. And I will end with this. We cannot afford standard procedure. Any Democrat in Congress right now who is going with business as usual is failing us. Whether it's ICE, whether it's tariffs, whether it's a Donald Trump administration that's bombed 7 countries. We need accountability, and we need someone who stands up for Cumberland County, because I'm sick and tired of a representative that does not even show or deliver for the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winder. Mr. Alexander.
Hi, everyone. Many of you know me. I've run for this seat before, but just as a recap, I'm from this district. I came here in the late 70s. I went to Landis Junior High. I graduated from Bond High. I met my wife here of 38 years. We've had our first 2 of our 3 children right here in Vineland before moving to Atlantic County. I've been in Atlantic County for about 35, 36 years. And I have spent my entire life fighting for justice. At 18 years of age, I graduated high school and reported to the police academy 6 months later. I had a career in law enforcement for 27 years, fighting for justice. I immediately, when I left the law enforcement job on a Friday, that following Monday, I reported to the district attorney's office in Philadelphia, where I continued to fight for justice. I did that for about almost 4 years before I decided that my real passion was in civil rights. So I went to work for the city of Philadelphia as a civil rights attorney, and then I went into private practice, is what I do to this day. I know how to fight. When you hear that term, you want to ask, what does that mean? It means standing up, doing the right thing, taking cases pro bono to help people who can't afford it. I grew up on a boulevard, very, very poor, and I worked my way up. My 3 campaigns of running has given me the experience, the knowledge, and the know-how to beat Jeff Andrew. We are running a surgical campaign this cycle based on data that we were able to get from the Mikey Sherrill campaign while we're working for them. And on that information right there, we know where we need to be, when we need to be there, and how we're going to win this campaign. I'm the only person on the stage who debated Jeff Van Drew, and I did a pretty good job of mopping the floor of him, and I look forward to doing it again. And with your support, I know we're going to win this campaign for the primary and the general. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for coming out on such a beautiful day. The first thing I want to say is I think one of the most important things, and it's a sad truth, but losers don't legislate. Everything you hear up here today, we will agree on 99% of the things, but none of it will get done if we don't beat Jeff Van Drew. My name is Zach Mullen. I'm mayor of Cape May. I'm a proud husband, a proud father of 3 kids. A couple debates ago I said 2 kids, but it is 3. I remember now. And to just tell you a little bit about myself outside of being mayor, I grew up in a family that really valued work. Hard work was really important. Growing up in Cape May, of course, all the wood houses, we were in a paintbrush, I think at like 9 years old. But what was most important was our community. What did you do to serve your community was what we were asked all the time by my parents. And that's why when I grew up, we would go to orphanages in South America. When I got older, we went down after Katrina, we went down to New Orleans and helped with the cleanup. We established the Harriet Tubman Museum in Cape May. I've served on the Atlantic Cape Community College for over 10 years, and we founded the Cape May Point Arts and Science Center. Those are all things I tell you just as my background outside of being mayor of Cape May. I'm proud that as I stand up here, I'm the only one that ever has won an election. That is important because I've done that right in Jeff Van Drew's backyard. As mayor, we have gotten done a lot of really important work. We've given raises to people who deserve it. And we've done a new firehouse, a new police station that we're doing right now, infrastructure work. Lots of things that I'm very excited and happy about and love to tell you about after I have more time. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. There is a broad consensus that our immigration system is broken. Ms. Reed, what 3 principles should shape a new system of immigration into the U.S. to replace it?
The three principles that should shape our immigration system or replace it would be compassion, dignity, and a path to citizenship. And the way we do that is reallocate the resources, the $170 billion over the next 5 years that we've been given to the Department of Homeland Security and ICE in order to militarize caring for people, but for abusing people because of the color of their skin, the language they speak, or the fact that they have tattoos, and even getting Americans tied into it as well. There's a complete lack of the rule of law with giving people the due process. And when you get back to that, it's accountability, it's making sure that the people who are in ICE, because we do have an immigration, system, that they are trained. Right now, they only get 47 days of training, as opposed to the original, I believe it was like 8 months before all this nonsense started. But these people are only looking for a better life for themselves and their families, much like our forefathers did as well. They're not here to grift. They're not here to abuse the system. If anything, they are the hardest working, some of the most law-abiding people that we have. And they deserve their chance, just as our forefathers did, to succeed and thrive and build a better life for themselves and their children. So as I said, compassion, humanity, dignity, and a path to citizenship.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Mr. Weiner, what 3 principles should shape a new system of immigration into the U.S. in order to replace the current law?
Accountability, transparency, and humanity. Our immigration system has been broken for a long time. That did not start with this administration. But what we are seeing now is a new extreme, and it's hitting our communities. I know here in Cumberland, in Atlantic County, across this district, ICE is out on the streets. The belief that agents can have total immunity, can trample local law enforcement, kidnap people, shoot people, is plain un-American. And it is what happens when Congress fails to check the executive branch, plain and simple. Congress should not give ICE another cent until we see huge, sweeping reform. Anyone who doesn't think that should get out. The solution to actually fixing this broken problem is by addressing the root causes. The money that's being spent in Minneapolis, in Bridgeton, that is not making us safer. Local law enforcement needs to be respected, trusted, and invested in, and the problems at the border need to be taken care of. With better technology, with judges to adjudicate cases, with a process that is humane. I worked on humanitarian issues all across the world. We have a humanitarian issue right here at home. We have detention centers being bought by the government across New Jersey to house human lives with zero accountability, to protect what Stephen Miller calls our culture. It's un-American, and Jeff Andrew has been nothing but a coward on this issue. Folks are not going to church, work, school. They are afraid to leave their house. People are walking around with their U.S. passport. This cannot go on. It cannot be the same old story. The time for reform is now, but it has to be deep and fundamental. It cannot be surface level.
Mr. Alexander, what three principles should shape a new system of immigration into the U.S. to replace the broken one?
First and foremost, we abolish ICE. Plain and simple. They are the United States Marine Corps. So we'll put agents back on the border where they belong, and this activity that we see going on, I will not call them law enforcement because they're not. What they're doing on the streets is plain and simple. It's terrorism. With respect to the second thing, we must have an obtainable pathway to citizenship. Something that people can work towards and know that it's impossible to meet the criteria in order to become a citizen of the United States. When they're here working for decades in some cases, never having a run-in with the law, and doing what any of us would ordinarily do, go to work and take care of their families. Lastly, there has to be accountability, but let me tell you what it looks like. Every single one, from the top at HHS to the boots on the ground, must be investigated and prosecuted where appropriate. I am a former prosecutor, a former actual law enforcement officer, and what these people are doing is a crime. I'm also a victim, a survivor of police brutality. Police violence, if you want to call it that. And I'm one of the lucky ones, because although I was clearly innocent, I made it out. I made it on the other side of that horrific process. So I know the agony and the pain that they're going through when they're just innocent people trying to live their lives. That's why there has to be prosecutions. When I get to Congress, the first request I'm going to ask of the new speaker is form a select committee and let me be a part of it so we can investigate HHS from the top to the bottom.
Mr. Muller, what three principles should shape a new system of immigration into the U.S. to replace the broken one that we currently have?
Thank you. Compassion, respect, and dignity. And you know what? We can do that because we've done it before. You know, there's a conservative hero, Ronald Reagan, and in his final address, he described a shining city on a hill, made up of immigrants. That is what made America great. Those were his words. How far we have fallen off that shining hill. The fact that now in Minnesota, you have our Constitution being trampled, you have people ignoring judicial orders, trampling on states' rights. You know, the mayor in Minnesota there was put in such an absolutely difficult situation, and so were all of the federal agents. And they were put in that position by the leadership. And it was terrible. And, you know, their police chief talked about how their officers have arrested over 900 people involving guns without any violence. Barack Obama had over 3 million people deported, but it was done with dignity and respect. We can do this again as a country, but we cannot do it under the current administration. They have gone completely insane, asking people for their papers in the streets, wearing these masks with no accountability whatsoever. It's absolutely wrong, and we need to stop it when we get to Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Finn, what three principles should shape a new system of immigration to the U.S. to replace the broken one that currently exists?
Thank you. I would say compassion, just plain old common sense, and accountability. And what I mean first by compassion is the DREAM Act. Why? And that's something that we should get from Congress, is an act that allows people, kids of illegal immigrants who have done nothing wrong other than be brought here. And who wouldn't want to come here? Who in the crowd here wouldn't want to take your son or daughter and bring them over to a better place, and then want them to have an opportunity to go to college? So I think the DREAM Act, that's compassion. That's, if you have the grades and the smarts, why are we denying somebody who can make college, who could maybe cure cancer, the right to go to college, or to make college a little more affordable for you, just because your parents weren't born here, or because you weren't born here and you came here at 3 years old without your choice? Common sense. And this is born from George W. Bush. And anybody who knows me knows I'm not a big fan of his. But he actually had not a bad plan. You know it was a good plan when it's the right that killed him. One of his parts of his plan was a temporary worker program. Last year, Florida was actually debating whether or not to challenge child labor laws because they didn't have workers. Common sense tells you, figure out a way to get the people who want to do that work that nobody else wants to do. As Terry said and everybody else said, hard work, terrible jobs that people want to do, why would we make 15, 6-year-olds do it? You have the workforce available, we're just deporting you from Home Depot. And lastly, as far as accountability, getting rid of administrative warrants, no masks, no body cams, no quotas, that's just the beginning. Thank you.
Mr. Winder, what single book has most influenced you in your life and career?
Well, I recently read a biography of Dwight Eisenhower. And the thing that was incredible to me about Dwight Eisenhower is that when he wanted to run for office, both Republicans and Democrats wanted him on their ticket. Could you imagine that today? It's very hard to imagine. He committed himself to public service before he thought about entering the world of politics. I believe we do not need career politicians. That's what got us here. That's why politics is broken. And I've been honored in my career to take that path of service. But I also want to recognize that Eisenhower got things done that made our country better in ways that are not the most glamorous, but changed millions of lives. Whether it's the highway system, basic infrastructure, we could take a page out of the playbook today. He was someone who focused on results, not political theater. Now, it feels like oftentimes in Congress, we have a bunch of guys there who are more worried about their next spot on Fox News or the podcast of Joe Rogan than actually delivering results. If you look at a chart of Congress, the number of bills that's passed, it's gone like this recently. These folks are not actually doing the work. They get the pay, they get the health care, they get the pension. They don't do the work. Working families do the work. But I would say that he is an inspiration, and we need to look back to that mode of America which got things done, which was not about political theater and rhetoric and sticking to your party no matter what, which was about coming together and finding solutions that worked for the American people.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Winder. Mr. Alexander, what single book has most influenced you in your life and career?
So as time goes on, new books come out. So I have to say that most recently that really had an impact on me is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. the parallels to my own life and the protagonist of the story are pretty remarkable. I didn't spend years in prison. I didn't go to jail at all. But the idea that I went from being a law enforcement candidate to now a indicted or would be indicted if they had their way. Person who didn't do anything other than sat in his car and had the unfortunate luck of having a car similar to the person they were actually looking for. But the response to that, as I was trying to leave because I just got done taking care of my father's funeral arrangements, the guy closest to me shot into my car, undercover officers. And I'm thinking I'm getting carjacked, so I throw my keys in and I give up. And they decided they want to take me too. They did a pretty good number on me, and they threw me in the back of this old beat-up Nova, and I was thinking I'm getting kidnapped. But the bottom line is, they ended up charging me, even though they admitted that they made a mistake when I didn't. They charged me with 3 counts of aggravated assault. So I got a lawyer, and I charged them with 3 counts or 3 acts of assault and attempted murder. And the bottom line was that everything was no bill in grand jury. But my grandfather, who was with me, right by my side the entire time, despite the fact he just lost his son, he said to me, if you want to make change, get inside and make change from within. Go back to the academy, become a police officer, and do the work. And that's exactly what I did. And when I read that book, I saw that opportunity that could have been robbed of me because bottom line is I was one of the lucky ones. Thank you, Mr.
What single book has most influenced you in your life and career?
For me, it's the Bible. And I quickly say that I believe very strongly in the separation of church and state. I talked a little bit about my work in orphanages as a young man. When I was a child, we actually took in a refugee family of the Muslim faith. And I remember those days very fondly, praying together as a family in separate faiths. But I, like many Christians today, cannot stand what I see from the conservative right using our religion the way it does. And frankly, just as recently as a couple of days ago, calling on Jesus to bomb people, as if this was a divine right to bomb someone. And then we bomb a school with 175 school children. And I just want to tell you about the Bible that I read, this book. It has Matthew 25:31. And that's really when someone asked Jesus, how do you get into heaven? And he said, do for the least of these, what you do for the least of these, you do for me. And then he went on to say, take care of the sick, take care of the hungry, take care of the widow, take care of the stranger. Though I tell you these things because they're guiding principles to me. And what does that mean? Take care of the sick. Fix health care if you're a congressman. Take care of the hungry. Make sure kids have school lunch. Take care of the stranger. Treat immigrants with respect. Thank you.
Mr. Finn, what single book has most influenced you in your life and career?
Actually, when you got this, it took me a couple minutes, a little bit to figure this one out, because a lot of what I read nowadays about sci-fi and fiction, I don't think that's, I'm not going to say that influences me, but I did think back at it, made me really look back at when I was in college. I know now I teach math, but I was originally a history major at deals of teaching history. And the one book that really influenced me in how I approach to being a history teacher, and even my approach now in just everyday life and schooling, is A People's History of the United States by Howard Stern. It takes the story of America, but shows it from the point of view of the marginalized people in this country. From Native Americans to Latino Americans to African Americans, it shows from their point of view and how the events that we've all grown up reading about, how it affected them, and how they were players in that same history that we have shared. And the idealistic part of me, when I was going to be a history teacher, thought to myself, This is part of the reason why people don't want to pay attention to history, because we're just told our leaders are just good people, and they were there, and all they did was good things. And they become disillusioned, because in reality, people are messy. Politics is messy. I don't teach history, but I teach in the inner city. I could teach in the suburbs, and I have plenty of friends who do teach in the suburbs. I'm not going to say it's easy. Teaching wherever, it's a craft. And it's, it's hard. But I go to the inner city to work with those students because they're the marginalized voices that I can help. Thank you.
What single book has most influenced you in your life and career?
I actually have two, and as Bill alluded to, we did get all the, many of these questions ahead of time, so I actually wrote down, so I gave it a lot of thought, and it's not something I read recently. Both are books that I read in the past, but I live by their values every day. The first one is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and the second one is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. Both books, I think, really resonate because a lot of the ideas that they put forward, or the things they talk about, are things that are missing greatly in our lives today. Authenticity, accountability, and the courage to be honest about who we are, recognizing our own faults, our own strengths, our own where we can be better. The Four Agreements teaches 4 principles. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And if we as a culture, as a world, more people live by those values, I think that our global political climate wouldn't be as bad as it is today. With Gifts of Imperfection, it reinforces the importance of leading with vulnerability and courage. I know that I struggle with vulnerability a lot because I've always had to be the strongest one in the room, the leader, the caregiver, the person who fought for everybody else. But it also talks about how real leadership comes from being willing to show up authentically, admit what we don't know. It's one of the things I learned at Apple, is that when people would come and ask us, a question, that the response was, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And I use it all the time today. But also to stay grounded in your values even when it's difficult. And that's something as well that is missing today in our leadership. So leadership too isn't pretending to be perfect, it isn't about pretending to know all the answers, but it's showing up with integrity, being authentic, as I said, humility, and a genuine commitment to doing the work, and that's what we're in Congress.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been requested to ask that we have no signs held up during the